Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the NFL Alumni Lounge. And I am honored to have the Chief Wellness Officer from the Cleveland Clinic, an all-around good guy, friend of the alumni, Dr. Mike Roizen. Doc, how are you?
I am great. Obviously I am a Brown season ticket holder, so I've got to get that out in advance, right?
Show him the hat, Doc. Show him the hat.
Yeah, so they send us a hat every year for a season ticket. I think it's so we can use the commissary stands easier, right? It's so you can buy the beer and not have to wait in the normal lines.
That's a beautiful, and it makes for a good beer bucket, folks. Hey, remember when Baker came and got that win and they unlocked those beer coolers all over Cleveland?
That was fun. No,
That was
no,
beautiful.
I wonder what they're going to, I mean, he did a ton of commercials on on the field, right?
What do they
So
do with that now? I guess he moved out of the stadium. He was living in the stadium in the commercials. So, Doc, I got to tell you, we were in Ohio for the Hall of Fame, obviously, and we did a great event at the Spire Institute, and we had a panel of Hall of Famers. It was Ray Lewis, Emmett Smith, Andre Reed, Bruce Smith, and Terrell Davis. And I watched these guys sit there, and we were talking about the Great Age reboot, and we were talking about some of the studies that you've done, and it was like they were getting ready for a Monday Night Football game. The level of intrigue and intensity they put into that show. And I think it's incredible what you do. And that's why I'm excited to bring you to the entire NFL alumni today.
well, it's really fun, and we care an awful lot about the health of the alumni, the health of everybody, but football players are special.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that was powerful in the room. Because if you haven't been to the Spire Institute, we're talking, it looks like probably 6 pro sports facilities under one roof. Um, and the crowd was high school athletes, college athletes, parents of athletes, and then just folks interested in Spire and in what the NFL Alumni Health was doing that day. And it was really cool to see these kids and these parents getting to hear exactly what the pros are hearing at the education point and learning the future of recovery. So I mean, the pillars, I'll tell you what, Doc, the 4 pillars got the people going.
Well, that's really true. So obviously, stress management is actually most important, and then physical activity and continuing physical activity is especially important. And we can go over the 4 physical activities that make a difference to how long and well you live.
Absolutely.
Then obviously, food choices, portion size, and time of eating is third, and the fourth is brain health, which includes sleep and avoiding, and then there's really a fifth one called avoiding unforced errors, such as texting while driving or something like that. So if you will, the 4 pillars are the really very, very important. The point is that we have, in the last 150 years, life expectancy in the US has increased by about 2.5 years every decade. Women always live about 3 years longer than men. We don't know why, but
Smarter.
yeah, well, that's true. But in any case, it's gone from an average of about 41 to 78. In the next 10 years, we're likely to get a 30-year exponential jump because of all the research into aging mechanisms. And that's really what the Great Age reboot is all about. It's how to prepare for that reboot, if you will, for that jump. So you're going to be able to, at age 90, be 40 as long as you don't have an unforced error, and you do things that are going to keep you intact till then.
Wow. So before we start breaking down the pillars, should we talk a little of the Human Genome Project?
Sure. So this all started, I can show some slides if you want, but it really all started with the Human Genome Project in the early 90s. 2 groups were competing. You know Francis Collins's name because he was CEO, or I don't know what the formal title is of NIH, and Craig Venter, who was on the private side, and they ended the same day, amazingly enough. And they both looked like they were going to find 300,000 genes. That's how much DNA we have in our nucleus. But they only found 22,500. And they called the rest of that DNA junk DNA. 8 years later, it was found out it's really switches, like rheostats for each gene. So the majority of your DNA is actually switches that control how active, whether the genes are on or not. All genes do is produce proteins. And so they're like protein factories. And whether you turn those on or not, under the age of 20, whether those genes are on or not is, if you will, the gene's choice. But over the age of 20, you have a great deal of power. And by the time you're 50, 80% of whether a gene is functioning or is off, whether it's making proteins or not, are your choices. So you have an enormous power. Let me give you the example of muscle activity. When you stress a muscle, you turn on a gene that produces a protein called a Roizen. The Roizen gets across your blood-brain barrier and makes your hippocampus bigger. It's the only organ in the body where size matters, believe it or not. So it's your memory, and it is the bigger your hippocampus, the longer you're going to have good cognitive function. So exercise is one of the most important things for our brain functioning. And it's not just, if you will, mental exercises. Those have some importance if you do what we call speed of processing games. But the real one, physical activity, stressing those muscles and continuing to stress them, is one of the greatest things for your brain.
Do the pillars, so if somebody's watching, right, one of our guys watching, they say, I want to make sure all of my switches are firing on all cylinders, that would take you to the pillars?
Yes, so exactly. So, in other words, stress management. And the most important thing is actually having buddies.
Mm,
So, you've had buddies during a team game, right? You
right,
always have buddies.
for
Well,
sure.
you keep in touch with them. So, the most important thing for the alumni actually is to keep their buddies, and it takes work, right? It takes someone making the phone calls. It
Yep.
actually takes someone organizing the games on Sunday to go to, if you will, the parties,
Right.
etc. But those are incredibly important. And that actually is the most powerful thing in stress management. Now, financial stress you got to deal with, but all the other stresses, the relationship stress, those are the ones that get us. And those are the ones that buddies, having a posse and a purpose in life, are the two most important things for aging in general. That is keeping your brain intact and keeping your whole body intact. Second is, if you will, food choices, portion size, and time of eating. There's some really good data that if for 5 days every quarter, if you, well, 5 days a month, if you've got a chronic illness, you go to a lower calorie, low protein, low simple carbohydrate diet, so it's fairly high in avocados and things like that.
Okay.
But all you want is 750 calories a day for 4 days, 1,000 the first day, and then 750, and it reverses all of the changes because it changes which genes are on. Fasting is one of the great things, and 750 calories for 5 days ends up resetting all your genes. So it's really a remarkable thing. So even if you don't worry, I think of food as a relationship. You shouldn't marry someone who's trying to kill you every day. You shouldn't eat food that's trying to kill you every day. So our word on food is only eat food that you love. You want to spend your time eating only food you love, but that loves you back.
Right.
And so food is a relationship, just like marriage is.
Do you recommend, like, if you're going to go into a fast like that, are there any times a day that you look to do that eating?
It turns out in the 5 day low calorie, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But what you really want to do is eat only when the sun is up or supposed to be up. I'm in Cleveland and we don't get sun in the winter perfectly. But anyway, you want to eat. So you want to eat from say 11:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night. So
Okay.
you're eating in an 8-hour window and 16 hours of fasting. That's shown to do pretty well. But in fact, much more important than that is if you can do the 5 days once a quarter. I mark it off on a calendar, so I do it that way.
Awesome.
Obviously, you don't want to do it if you've got a Thursday football game you're going to watch. You don't want to do it on that, so you gotta do perfect timing of that, if you will. But you can do it every week, every month. I'm sorry, every quarter. And then so the foods to avoid, and I know I'm going to get booed on this. I did this at a club in California, a men's club in California, that had 2,300 people, and they stood up and booed me when I said this. But anyway, um, it's tough to give a live talk in front of an audience of peers, if you will, and everyone stands up. But it is red meat, processed red meat,
Okay.
egg yolks,
Really?
simple sugars, added syrups, simple carbohydrates. Now you say, why those three? That is red meat, processed red meat, and egg yolks. It's not the saturated fat. It turns out it's the proteins with it, carnitine, lecithin, and choline, change the bacteria inside your gut to make it produce inflammation in you. And so inflammation is really the bugaboo. That's also what happens when you have straight sugar, simple carbohydrates, added syrups, and if you will, simple carbs, added sugar, added syrups. So those are on. Everything else is great. So salmon, you like salmon? Great. You like avocados? Wonderful. You like beans? Great. You like greens? Fine. I mean, everything else you can find. Chicken? Great. So the point is, you get to choose everything else. It's only the data on food choices aging you. But even more important than that is doing the 750 calories for 4 days, for really 5 days, 1,000 calories one day, 750 the next four. You get to ketosis. So if you're exercising, you'll find out the first 3 days you can do fine. By day four, all of a sudden, it's really you feel great. You're
Right.
ready to go on a hard cardio or a hard weightlifting routine, and 20 minutes into it, you find you're struggling because your muscles aren't as used to metabolizing ketones as you should be, if you will, or you could be.
So, Doc, when you start the day off and you think you're doing good, because even myself, like you eat the eggs. Do you recommend cutting eggs out or just do the egg whites?
Egg white. So,
Okay.
every Saturday and Sunday, I have an egg white veggie omelet, which is
Okay.
essentially egg whites. And you can put as many egg whites. Egg whites are 15 calories an egg. So, if in equivalent, you can have a 7 egg white, and you're under 100 calories, and with the veggies, it's very few calories too. So you can eat a big lot of food without many calories.
Wow. So then when we go from the nutrition, avoiding the toxins, exercise, I guess that's pretty straightforward, especially for the NFL alumni community. But
Yeah, but
the
let me
sleep.
go on. So
Yeah.
walking. So remember, it is stressing a muscle, and you want to stress it with both resistance exercise, moving something against gravity. Those guys, the NFL alumni, know that well. You
Right.
also want to do general activity. Walking gives you 50% of the benefit that all exercise does, believe it or not. So if you've got an injury, you got an old injury, if you can walk, that's great. And then the second most important is weightlifting. Third, is cardio. And I'm saying it in that order. So if the guys haven't done it in a while, don't try and go to where they were when they were great, if you will.
Right.
That is, build up gradually and only do cardio after you've done resistance training and walking for 30 days. Because what you see, guys think they're all, it is, I'm feeling great, I'm going to do more.
Right.
That's when you injure yourself, and maybe they know it better than the general patient that I get to talk to. But you got to build up gradually. Don't go for it all at once.
I got to say before we go into anything on the restorative sleep, when the first point was made at the presentation about buddies and the buddy system, Warren Sapp, who I didn't mention earlier, who was the sixth Hall of Famer on the panel, he broke into a great story where he was saying, like, after retirement, he was kind of bummed out, not doing as much. And then he started a group chat. And in his group chat, he had Ray Lewis, he had Terrell Davis, he had Bruce Smith, all those guys, Emmett Smith. And these guys now hold each other accountable. Every morning, Warren hits them up at like 6 a.m. And he's like, how many miles have we put in on the road? Because they're all into cycling now. So it's like a group challenge with the buddies where they can still, talk trash and they can have fun with each other, but they're all going after the greater good of fitness. So that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, and just their associating with one another
Yeah.
and being vulnerable to one another, being honest with one another, that's actually the key for managing stress. So, yeah, and they're also getting it with physical activity, probably helps them with stress. So they're really getting a huge, if you will, lift in their aging. That is, they
Awesome.
get a to be younger, substantially younger. Stress management, if you have three major life stresses, a friend dies, you're sued, something else happens, um, your wife or your whatever starts hanging out with someone else, if you will, or a kid has a problem.
Yeah.
Those three life stresses make you the equivalent of 32 years older in risk of disability and risk of dying. But if you have six friends, like they have just once a month, six friends, it's only 2 years for those same three events. So it's
Wow.
huge. And we have really substantial data from, Great Britain, what we call the Whitehall studies, and from Alameda County. I apologize, I'm a science nerd. But in any case, the point is we have huge amount of data showing that a posse is the most important thing at decreasing your rate of aging. And every one of your alumni can have a posse. I mean, you're unique. I mean, there isn't
Yes.
one player who isn't looked up to by the fans he's been in there. Everyone knows how incredible these athletes are.
Absolutely.
And so the point is, every one of them can have a posse of fans, if not their fellow players.
Absolutely. And then the cool thing too for the alumni is the golf tournaments, they mingle with so many people and the business transactions and things. So really guys, do take advantage of that. And another cool thing, Doc, was, and this will probably lead us into the fourth pillar, is that Emmett Smith was saying one of the biggest changes for him that made him feel good. He stopped eating. I think it was, he said 7 o'clock. He stopped eating because he didn't want to go to bed full. And then he would get a solid night's sleep. And he said his sleep was actually better on a lighter stomach than on a heavy stomach. I don't know if there's any truth to that. You
That
tell
is
me.
absolute truth. I wrote another book. It's probably behind me someplace, called "What to Eat When," and it turns out that if you eat the majority of your food 8 hours before you go to bed and stop eating 3 hours before bedtime, you sleep better, you have more energy the next day, and you're not hungry at night. You got to do it 4 days. So by the fifth day, those things kick in. That is sleeping better, more energy the next day, not being hungry at night. And so those are the key things, and it's amazing. So Emmett Smith is exactly right. GERD, that is what happens when we eat close to bedtime, is we secrete stomach acid and bile acids, the
Mhm.
acids from the liver, and those regurgitate a little up. And
Interesting.
especially if you sleep if you don't sleep on your back, and because of heaviness and because of neck size, there's a lot of sleep apnea if you sleep on your back. So people like to sleep on their side so they breathe better. And when you do that and eat right close to dinner, you don't sleep right close to sleeping. You don't go to bed. You don't sleep well. Now I've got a key pearl. One of the keys in sleeping is setting the same time of awakening. So most people say, I'm going to sleep 8 hours or 7 hours or 7.5 hours, and but they move the time they wake up. That's the
Right.
wrong way of doing it.
Right.
The key is, and especially because the athletes have traveled across the country for games, etc. But you want to get up at the same time. Now that they're not as active, not having to travel as much. get up at the same time, no matter what,
Hmm.
then they will start to fall asleep at the right time, if you will. They'll be tired enough to fall asleep. So we have two things that go on in sleep. One is a hormone or neurotransmitter called adenosine that builds up. And then it's when that builds up that you want to hit to sleep, and melatonin then kicks in at the same time.
Hmm.
So those are the two factors, if you will, that help you go to sleep. And the key is always waking up at the same time. It's not going to bed at the same time, it's waking up at the same time, no matter when you go to bed.
Interesting. What do you set your wake up time as?
Well, and this is, I am a little crazy. I'm a physician and I get to work by 7 a.m.
Okay.
And so I get up every morning at 5.
Okay. I was in the drugstore the other day and you go to the back wall and I notice now there's a whole wall of like melatonin products to help you sleep. Is that bad for you? Because it
Oh,
seems like the consumption's gone way up.
it's not bad. And in fact, there's some fairly sizable data. Now, what we want to do is make sure if you don't need it, you shouldn't take it.
Okay.
And it's very good when you take it periodically, like traveling across country to get to sleep so you wake up at the same time.
Okay.
And you want to take a vacation from it so it has effect. So if you're taking it, take it 4 weeks and take a vacation for a week. But the point is that it actually has some anti-cancer effects,
Oh, wow.
as well as some immune strengthening effects, as well as sleep. And we think of it as the major effect is in the brain, but the major effect may be on your immune system. So
Oh,
we're just
wow.
learning all this. So melatonin may be a great choice.
Wow, there you go, folks. And we don't even have any products on the line right now. Jeez. So, Doc, if there
And
were
just so I have no conflicts other than the Cleveland Clinic and the books, The Great Age Reboot, and the accompanying app.
well, Doc, we might have the Roizen boots, products coming out next week. So, if there were three changes today that our guys could make, what should they be?
Well, one is to add speed to their workouts and add speed to their brain games.
Mm.
So, doing a brain game that forces you to act quickly. I've got it back here, which is called the Double Decision. It's by Brain HQ. I have no relationship to them, but it's been shown to decrease your risk of dementia. Just 18 hours over 10 years
Wow.
decreases your risk of dementia by over 40%. So
Jeez.
huge benefit. The other thing is speed of exercise. As I said, adding speed to your that last 2 minutes of exercise, or adding the tougher weight when you stress that muscle, you're building your brain up. So add speed to your brain and body. Secondly, is an attitude change. You're a genetic engineer for you. You are the most important person at controlling what you do. And the third, is probably is I don't say this to my normal patients because they're already seeing a doc, but is see someone who is honest and trustworthy to you, both in your financial game and in your medical care.
Mm.
That is, you need a team. Nobody can do it alone. You didn't do it alone playing football. You're not going to do it alone in the rest of life. You need a team and choose them for trust and honesty. It doesn't have to be your bride, doesn't have to be your wife, doesn't have to be, if you will, your kids. You want a team around you. And if you're doing something for more than 3 days, you're going to take an antibiotic for 5 days, you should get a second opinion.
Mm.
So don't go with a first opinion. You, of all people, everyone loves football players.
Right.
You have the ability to get second opinions to get the best care you want. And so you can do this and get a second opinion. So choose a team and use the team, and know your preventive care. Know that you control your genes, and your posse and passion are important. And then add speed to both the brain games and your exercise.
Cleveland Browns, I don't know why you haven't hired Doc as your head coach yet. The answer's right here. What's going on? What the heck is going on?
Actually, it's my wife. We have season tickets,
Right?
okay, and because we were friends with the former owners and even the current owners, we have tickets that are on the 50-yard line, 19 yards up. They're perfect,
Oh,
right? But my wife will only go to games if, and it has to have one of two things. It's going to be 55 at the end of the game, temperature wise, or we have a winning record going into the game. She's only been to 4 games in 16 years. I'm begging,
guys, let's say a special prayer for Doc and the Brownies this year. Okay, it's time. We need them back in the playoffs. And be sure, guys, if you haven't read it yet, pick up a copy of The Great Age Reboot. The 13th,
September 13th.
September 13th, it will be out. Doc, thank you so much for the impact you've had on NFL alumni health, and educating everybody at the Spire Institute. That was a great day.
Thank you. My privilege, and thank you for doing this. I'm happy to come back anytime. If you see me at a Browns game and I'm crying, you'll know why.
He needs a posse around them, dog pound. Thank you so much, Doc.
I've got to tell you one more story. My daughter gave me a book.
Right.
My daughter, she's a grown daughter, she's an organic chemist at the Department of Energy, so she's grown. But she gave me a book, which is "Why Is My Dad Always Sad on Sunday Afternoons?"
We got to turn things around.
I don't know if any of you guys can sabotage the other teams, but let's have the Brownies win a few.
I'll call Bernie Kozo and see if we get him back out there for you. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.